Welcome on in, everyone, to today's live stream, where we're going to be talking about the truth about abs and real core strength. We're going to be talking about something that affects way more people than you may think. Conditions such as diastasis recti, pelvic floor dysfunction, and the truth about how your core actually works. We're going to dive into some common misconceptions about what the core is and how to properly activate it and strengthen it. If you've ever felt like you have weak abs, or maybe you've had a baby recently, maybe you're dealing with pelvic floor dysfunction. This is something that's common for men and for women, both diastasis recti and pelvic floor dysfunction. And maybe you're just dealing with general instability as well. So, this is going to give you a lot of clarity and hope. I'm Jenna, and I'm the founder of this community, Thrive Beyond Pain. We do these live streams every week so that we can connect as a community and go over some topics that I know are important and are maybe coming up for folks in their daily lives. I usually base these live streams off of things that come up in my one-on-one sessions with my clients. And I realize that these are things that a lot of people are struggling with. And so I really wanted to provide some clarity on this specific topic when it comes to core strength and how we can properly recruit these amazing muscles that we've been given and how to use them with the proper strength and function as they were meant to. So let's go ahead and dive into this today. And if you are joining me on this live stream, then feel free to say hello and pop something into the chat. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to also pop that in the chat or the comments below. So if you have ever struggle with diastasis recti, you know it can be really frustrating. It's something that can be sometimes hard to figure out which exercises to do and which ones not to do. So that's why we're going to talk about this a little bit today. So what it is a separation of the abdominal wall, more specifically the rectus abdominis. And what happens there is, of course, with pregnancy, this is something that's very common because the abdominal wall is going to stretch. But another thing that happens is if we have a lot of load and pressure there in the abdominal cavity, then that can also create that split that goes down the center of the belly. So, this, like I said, can happen to anyone, men included, especially if we have poor core mechanics. So, the problem isn't just this gap, but it is the loss of tension in that linea alba. So that goes all the way down the middle of your abdominal wall. And then that creates the inability to regulate pressure inside of the abdomen. And so that's where our deeper core muscles come into play and our breathing. So we're going to go over that and how to do that properly towards the end of this live stream today. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about, and as I'm doing this, I'm just going to pop into the chat here and see who is tuning in to join us here. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the transverse abdominis. So maybe you've heard of the transverse abdominis before. So that is like our corset muscle, and it kind of wraps around front to back and draws and really pulls everything in to support our spine and also to really support our organs. But here's the key: it does not work well if we're gripping or if we're tensing or even maybe sucking in. So, real engagement is gentle and it's best done with the breath. So again, I'll teach you towards the end how to do that. We'll have some more kind of practical exercises and examples that I can give you. But right now I'm just kind of describing, what these things are and giving you a little bit of anatomy so that you have a better understanding of it when we get to that point. And like I said before, when it comes to the transverse abdominis, breathing is the most important way that we can get this muscle to fire and to turn on. Because if we can get this muscle to work with our pelvic floor, then that really gives us a great foundation for our core. So, in terms of the pelvic floor, when we inhale, our diaphragm is going to move down, right, to create space for that air. So our lungs will expand, the diaphragm moves down. And if this was the diaphragm and my bottom hand is the pelvic floor, then it's going to go like this. So the diaphragm descends and the pelvic floor is going to naturally respond to that. And then the same thing on the exhale. So it'll start to ascend or go up, and the diaphragm is going to push the air out of the lungs, and the pelvic floor is also going to rise up with it. So they work together in this beautiful dance going up and down like that with our breath. And there's obviously more to it than that, but that's a very basic example of how that works. So think about what might happen if we hold or restrict our breath, or if we bear down, then that pressure that we're creating, that intra-abdominal pressure, it has to go somewhere, right? And so that pressure will often go into the pelvic floor. And that can be one reason why organ prolapse happens, because of that pressure that doesn't have anywhere to go. And we can regulate that with breathing, and with proper biomechanics and working with these muscles that we're talking about today in a way that creates better function. Okay. And this is another reason also why things like heavy lifting or crunches can often just make things worse, not just for diastasis, but also for that prolapse, because of that pressure that we're talking about, right? Okay, so the next thing that I want to dive into is the internal and the external obliques. You may or may not have heard of these muscles. I'm going to see if I can scoot back a little bit so that you can see my ribs. So the external obliques are here on the ribs. They wrap like this, and you can do this with me if you're watching this at home. So when you engage them, they wrap around like this, okay, like a corset. They kind of knit the ribs together and draw everything in, right? So that corset wraps front to back, and they help to close that gap when they work together with the transverse abdominis muscle that we talked about before. So when it comes to a condition like diastasis recti, if we can get these muscles all working together properly, then they can help again to close that gap. That is another job of the rectus abdominis. So the rectus abdominis is like your six-pack muscle. Okay, so I just introduced four muscles that really make up your abdominal muscles: the transverse abdominis, the external obliques, the rectus abdominis, and we're also going to talk about the internal obliques. So those are muscles that are kind of down here into your lower belly. Okay, so if you have kind of like a cushion, or maybe, something that you can sit on that feels comfortable for you, then let's go ahead and see if we can do that together with our breathing so that we can just really feel those muscles working together. Okay. So I'm just going to pop in here in the chat again, see if I can see what's going on here. All right. So what we're going to do is you're going to have your hands on your rib cage, and you're going to turn to one side. Okay, so I'm turning here to the left. And when I do that, I feel the muscles on the right side fire up. Okay, so that's the external obliques on my right side are working to turn me to the left. Okay, and then what's happening with those internal obliques that are lower down? Let me come up a little higher so you can see that. Um, is these internal obliques are pulling me this way. So they're contracting. There's a concentric and eccentric contraction going on of these muscles, right? So I'm doing that the other way. So you should literally be able to feel those muscles turning on, right? So when it comes to having back pain, especially if you're doing a lot of rotational sports, a lot of people are turning from their back, turning from their actual spine, not using their abdominal muscles to actually turn them, which can then cause more shearing in the spine and cause pain because it puts more pressure on the discs of our back, right? So this is a good thing to practice is turning from your abdominal muscles. Okay, so that's the external, the internal obliques. So those are really important when it comes to diastasis recti, because if we're engaging them improperly, then it can create more of a split in the abdominal wall. And if you're not sure if you have something like that going on, the test for that is to lay on your back, to bring your hands behind your head, and to lift your head and shoulders up and to kind of look at your abdominal wall. And you can probably see if you do have that going on, that there's like a bread loaf there. There's a pooch in the belly. And then the test would be to be able to stick your fingers in there. So if you can stick about 2 fingers in there, then you probably do have a gapping there in that linea alba. So, the transverse abdominis muscle that we talked about before would be a muscle that would be really important to learn how to recruit because it helps to draw everything in like a corset. And then those external obliques are going to work to draw the ribs down. So, that's another important thing when it comes to diastasis recti, but also when it just comes to general back pain, is that a lot of us tend to kind of thrust or pop our ribs forward. When we do that, so I'll turn to the side so you can see that. It obviously is arching our back a lot, but it's going to be stretching these muscles here in the front of the abdomen. And so when we flare our ribs, which most of us do have that pattern, it's going to again overly stretch the anterior abdominal wall, the front of the abdominal wall, and it'll cause more force, more pressure, more stretch, and it's going to be really hard for those muscles to be able to knit together and to properly heal. Okay, so again, I'm going to show you an exercise a little bit later on that you can do that will definitely help with that. But I just wanted to make sure first to cover what are these muscles, what actually makes up the core. So the core is technically made up of the um, diaphragm, the pelvic floor that we talked about before, transverse abdominis, we've already covered that. And the fourth muscle that we haven't talked about yet, which is your multifidi. And those are little muscles that go up and down your spine. They help to stabilize your spine, and they should be co-contracting with the other muscles in your core so that they're all working in synchrony together and supporting each other. So if you want to feel where those muscles are, you can just take your thumbs and just kind of place them right alongside your spine and then just lean forward. And you should feel those muscles bulking up under your thumbs as you lean forward. And then you can lean back. You'll feel them turning off as you lean back, and you'll feel them turning on as you lean forward. So I'll show you where my thumbs are. They're really close to my spine. Okay. So those are the four muscles that work to make up your core. And we didn't get into the pelvic floor too much, so I just want to cover that before we get into those exercises I was going to show today, because there's a lot of confusion about what exercises to do more specifically for the pelvic floor. So let's talk a little bit about Kegels, because those are often the first pelvic floor exercise people are told to do. But the truth is that Kegels alone are not enough. And in some cases, they can actually make things worse. It's not a very functional exercise. So it would be like you want to strengthen your arms. You want to get more arm strength, and you would just be holding your arm up here and squeezing your bicep. Okay, so you may get some strength there in your bicep and in your arm, but it's not a very functional way to use your bicep because your arm is going through a lot of different ranges of motion throughout the day. It's not just sitting here in one static position. So contracting it and relaxing it that's the same thing as a Kegel. There are a few different studies that were done on this, and one of them found that coordinated pelvic floor training is more effective than an isolated Kegel type exercise, especially when combined with the diaphragmatic breathing that we talked about before and functional movement that just naturally is going to contract and relax your pelvic floor. And that would be like a squat. So, a squat would naturally contract and relax your pelvic floor in a more functional way because we're getting up and down throughout the day. Hopefully, when you either sit in a car or you get up and down from a chair, you're actually working your pelvic floor muscles because your pelvic floor does attach to the muscles around your glutes, your ischial tuberosities, your sitting bones. And so every time you're getting up and down, when your pelvis is widening, then that is actually contracting and relaxing your pelvic floor muscles. There's another study that was done in the British Journal of Sports Medicine that concluded that pelvic floor muscle training should be emphasized both with strength and coordination integrated into daily movements. So, kind of the same thing. Um, so, yeah, when it comes to Kegels, oftentimes these exercises are just not done correctly as well. Your pelvic floor may actually be too tight, and just because a muscle is tight doesn't mean it's strong. It can be tight and weak. And these exercises are often done also with gripping or breath holding or without full relaxation, which, as we talked about earlier, can actually increase pelvic floor tension instead of supporting the balance of those muscles. And another thing about Kegels is they don't address that pressure management that we were talking about before, that intra-abdominal pressure. So if you're doing Kegels, but you're still bearing down during lifting or straining, if you're, going to the bathroom, then that's putting pressure on the pelvic floor as well in a way that is going to probably negate the benefits of the actual exercise. And then lastly, as this study pointed out, Kegels don't teach coordination. So our pelvic floor, like we've been talking about in this live stream today, it's part of this team of other muscles, your diaphragm, your transverse abdominis, the multifida. So if we just isolate it, then it does not retrain it to function reflexively and rhythmically with movement and breath. Okay. And then lastly, too much tension there in that muscle is just as problematic as weakness. So many people with pelvic floor issues, especially if it's prolapse or pain, actually have hypertonic or overactive pelvic floor muscles. And so doing these exercises without first learning how to relax the tension in those muscles can make our symptoms much worse. And on a more energetic level, when we're stressed or when we're in fight or flight, we often grip those muscles and we tense our pelvic floor and we pull the energy up our body. And when we can learn how to unclench those muscles and relax them, then that can be really helpful, not only for those muscles and teaching them how to let go so they're not just chronically tight or hypertonic, but it also helps to actually relax your nervous system as well, which can just be really important, especially when it comes to dealing with chronic pain. Okay, so let's talk about from there then what should you do? Well, we already gave a couple examples of using breath with gentle movement to activate the core and the pelvic floor in a more functional way. So, the way that I do this with clients, and we usually go over this in the very beginning of our sessions, probably session number one, so that we can learn how to properly use our diaphragm, breathe in a way that helps to mobilize it and stretch it and work the muscle of the diaphragm, and along with the pelvic floor and the muscles of the core. So if you have just a chair or cushion that you can sit on, and we'll go ahead and do that breathing practice and that core activation together. And if it's not comfortable to sit upright, then you can always do this lying on your back. If you're pregnant, you can do this on hands and knees. So it doesn't really matter what position you're in, just should feel like it's a comfortable position for you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is bring the hands onto the sides of the ribs. And we're just going to practice this diaphragmatic breathing, but in a way where it expands the ribs laterally. So this way, side to side, as opposed to um, anteriorly, which is through the front of the body. It's much easier for us to breathe that way than it is for us to breathe sideways. So we're going to bring our hands to our ribs just to help facilitate that movement so we can feel that the ribs are actually expanding there. And we're going to take a deep breath in and really stretch, expand, and fill our ribs into our hands, and then exhale. And I'm really exaggerating this movement so you can see it in the camera. But as you might also notice, my shoulders are coming up towards my ears as I'm doing that. So I do want to try to avoid doing too much excessive contraction in the shoulders as I'm breathing. So you really just want to feel the ribs expanding side to side. Nice. And now bring your hands down to kind of like your lower belly, where I showed you those internal obliques are down there. And we're going to go ahead and take a big breath in and see if you can feel some movement down into your lower belly now. Maybe you feel like something's happening more on one side than the other side, like you feel one side's expanding, the other side's not expanding as well. So if that's something that you're noticing, then you can bring your awareness and your breath to those areas and see if you can find a little bit more expansion there. And now we just want to visualize that we're breathing all the way down into the bowl of the pelvis because we're facilitating that movement of the pelvic floor with the diaphragm. So this is helpful to even visualize this, that your diaphragm is moving down as you inhale. And in response, your pelvic floor is also moving down. And as you exhale, they are gently ascending or moving upwards. So you can think about this like a trampoline, moving up and down in synchrony with each other. And now on our exhales, we're going to add a core activation as well. So, as I mentioned, we don't want to grip or bear down, and that can be something that can be really common when we're first learning how to do this. When we're first learning how to contract these muscles, we can be used to really like clenching to try to contract a muscle, and it's going to feel a lot more subtle and a lot more gentle than that. So if you bring your hands onto the front of your belly and you take a breath in, and then as you exhale, you should start to feel the abdominal wall drawing in towards your spine. So on the inhale, we're going to bring our hands to the side of our ribs. Feel that lateral movement, that expansion side to side. As you exhale, hands on the belly. And it shouldn't feel like a pushing out or a bulking up of those muscles. Okay, so instead, it should feel like a drawing in, flattening towards the spine. So now we're going to add on to that by engaging the multifidi along with the transverse abdominis. So if you bring your thumbs to either side of your spine like we did before, and go ahead and take a deep breath in. And on your exhale, you want to feel that core set, the drawing in of your TVA, wrapping front to back. And then with your thumbs, what you should feel is that activation of the multifidi muscles. And this can be a little bit more subtle. So sometimes folks don't feel this right away, and that's fine. I usually will work on this particular practice for maybe 3 or 4 sessions with somebody before it maybe really feels like it clicks. So it's okay if you don't feel it right now, you can keep practicing it. So you're taking a breath in. As you exhale, you're feeling that wrapping front to back. I'm going to show you from the back with my thumbs on either side of my spine. So there's two ways you could contract these muscles. One is that they could actually be shutting off. The muscles in your back could be turning off. And that's not what we want to feel. We want to actually feel the muscles in the back engaging and the muscles in the front drawing in and activating. And when you start to get that, it should feel really good because it should feel like a back brace. This is nature's back brace, I always say. And we have been designed with this beautiful support that we just get to have. So we're just learning how to reactivate it, how to turn it back on, but it's already there for us. So there's really not much to do other than how to just remember how to activate it. So this replay will be up in the group if you want to just continue to go over this and watch this a few times to practice it. I would definitely suggest that. And if you would like some more support with this, I would love to just jump on a call with you and see if we can find how this could apply to whatever's going on for you. So maybe you're dealing with low back pain. Maybe it's prolapse or, like I said, diastasis recti. If you have one of those things going on, we can definitely just take a few minutes and hop on a call and see how this could apply to you and go over how you can work with these muscles to support you better. So if you would like to take me up on that offer, you can comment support below and I will reach out to you and give you my calendar. So I look forward to seeing you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you on the next one.